Rep. Manoogian?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks so much for bringing this before our committee. I have several questions about the legislation that, if you're not able to answer, of course, I'll ask our industry stakeholders, but thought I would pose them to you first. So I thought I would start with some of the states that have already allowed these programs. Oftentimes when we're state legislators, we look to other states to sort of see what those models look like.
Sure.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about states such as California and Missouri, because we've seen those programs be rife with predatory lending practices and unscrupulous contractor backroom dealings, and cases of individuals being evicted from their homes because they're unable to pay the PACE loan back. And so, I wanted to ask the question, are there consumer protections that are built into this bill in particular, lessons learned from what happened in Missouri? That state legislature actually had to go back in and re-look at the bills that they had originally passed to fix some of these major problems. So I wanted to know if you had learned from those mistakes in Missouri and built those practices into your bill.
Well, to be honest with you, Representative, I have not looked into Missouri. We've learned from the mistakes of California. That's the state that I've actually looked to and gathered the most data. And we have built-in consumer protections regarding this legislation. For example, there was a lot of contractors that were taking advantage. They found out, how much potential home buyer was getting lended within the PACE lending program, and so they would, increase their bid to that amount and then do shoddy work. And so there's been a lot of issues in terms of consumer protection. And to your point, we have learned from other states, and we have some built-in protections in place for consumers. I'll let some of the industry folks do a deeper dive into that, but yes, that was taken into full consideration with this particular legislation.
Great. Okay, so I also wanted to ask the question then. So at this time, there's an ongoing CFPB and FHFA rulemaking process regarding residential PACE loans and how they interact with federal home loans. And so given this, I'm just sort of wondering why now is the right time to introduce this legislation when we don't have those rules promulgated yet, to be able to make sure that our legislation is in line with what that rulemaking looks like.
Yeah, there are some issues regarding like federally backed mortgages and things like that. So, I mean, we had to inform these people that are going to participate in the program that they're going to have to navigate that down the road. For example, they might have to negotiate that at the time of their sale if they want to sell the house, various things like that. So I think the most important component of this is informing these people that want to participate in the PACE program of some of the challenges that they might face down the road. Again, should they want to sell their house or various things like that.
Rep. Manoogian?
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. And just one quick question. So in Michigan, we have Michigan Saves funds that could be used, but we know that they're specifically designed for energy efficiency upgrades and may not be used for some of the things that you outlined for Representative Cherry. So I guess my question for you is, basically, rather than getting people to access equity in their home and potentially lose their home if something happens to their financial situation, wouldn't it be better for us to just fund that program better and spread awareness and raise that awareness?
I mean, when it comes to Michigan Saves or any grant program, anything like that, the need, they work well with PACE, right? It helps stretch out, PACE could help stretch out how those programs work and stretch out the amount of money that is going to fund those programs. There's no conflict between the two.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks so much for your testimony. I have a quick question about, federally backed home loans. So it's my understanding that oftentimes, if you have a Freddie or a Fannie loan, that the government, sort of in line with what Representative Morse was asking, these loans, if you go to purchase a home, may not lend if a PACE loan comes with that property. Can you explain a little bit more if you've seen this in your time in this industry?
Of course. So I've actually been in the industry quite a few years. I started in the industry prior to the FHFA coming out with that position. And what I've actually seen personally is that that position has actually cleared up a fair amount of confusion from realtors and PACE assessment companies who were helping homeowners through that sale process. So now it's very clear that homeowners do have to pay off. The seller essentially pays off the assessment if the buyer has a Fannie or Freddie backed mortgage, and that's something that has done away with some ambiguity in the market, and we've seen that those transfer of sales go a lot smoother than they did prior to essentially that decision coming out from FHFA.
Great, I appreciate that. So just for clarity's sake, about 80% of potential buyers have these specifically have Freddie or Fannie loans. So that's a huge portion of folks who are looking to purchase or sell their homes. So this is something that should be considered quite common, right? When this comes up. So I guess I'm just sort of. You said that this is something that will help expand this access to more people, but when 80% of home buyers or homeowners have these government-backed mortgages, I'm just trying to understand how there's this sort of an expansion. I guess it would only be about that 20% of folks, considering there's major barriers to accessing PACE, specifically if you have a Freddie or a Fannie loan.
That's a great question. I think that you need to look at in each community how often homes are sold and purchased. Are families who need to use PACE going to stay in their home for 5, 10, 15 years? If so, they have the ability to potentially pay off that PACE assessment before they go to sell. Also, I think that looking at just the homeowners here in Michigan, this is a program that would expand access to capital for them. And, hopefully that answers your question.